However, after developing it, like a year later, I wound up in a voice specialist office in Boston. And after looking everywhere for a year and dealing with this, it was so nice. The guy walked in the room, heard me speak, and right away nonchalantly goes, "Oh, that? Yeah, we deal with that all the time. Get scheduled for a Botox injection in a couple weeks."
Welcome to the Path to Passive podcast, where we talk about building wealth and empowering lifestyle through commercial real estate investing for tech professionals. I always wish that other tech professionals reaching financial freedom had documented their journey along the way, so I'm doing it for the rest of us. Join us as we explore stories, many failures, and lessons learned along the way. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Path to Passive Real Estate Investing for Tech Professionals. I am your host, Steven Arita, and today, this episode, I get a chance to sit down and have a conversation with Nick Prefontaine. He shares his story from a life-altering snowboarding accident to becoming a successful real estate professional. And I think that's really the theme of this episode. One way that I've heard this type of story is to go from mess to message. At least that's the way that I'm interpreting about it and I think about it. It's how he went from, again, this life-altering snowboarding accident to taking all of that through these many, many years, really, that he goes through to becoming this person that is able to build the speaking platform to share his message. And one of the frameworks that he comes up with and has really pulled out of him through this entire process is the step system framework that he's come up with, which is support, trust, energy, and persistence. Now, you'll have to listen to him explain it, who does a much better job, and it is his message after all. But he does that here, and it is a common theme through his life. So we talk about real estate, we talk about that step in your life in many different areas. So if you enjoyed this, like, share, comment, subscribe. Please also reach out to me. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn or email. Let me know how you enjoyed this. And if there's anything else you'd want to hear from Nick too, you can reach out to him as well. Links are in the show notes. And I hope you, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you enjoy this and listen. Have a great day. Nick, dude, thank you for being on the show. I absolutely appreciate it. You've got quite a story as well, overcoming some things and a fact of resilience in addition to, your real estate background. For the listeners just getting to know you, tell us a little bit how you got into real estate before we dive into your story.
Sure, and Stephen, it actually goes all together. So I'd like to take everyone back to that fateful day when I was in 8th grade at ski club with my friends, because it all kinds of goes together. My kind of introduction into real estate, because I grew up in a family real estate. My family was in real estate in all aspects of real estate growing up, so it's all I knew. So it is kind of interwoven into the story. However, where it starts for me was I was at ski club with my friends, and actually on our way to the mountain, we had all packed our gear so we wouldn't miss a precious moment once we got to the mountain. So we got ready on the bus, whereas the rest of the class, they wasted time once they got to the mountain and they went inside and they took their time and got ready, but not us. We were ready to go. So we got to the mountain, headed right for the chairlift, and on the way up, we noticed that it was very icy because it had been raining. So people earlier in the day, so people were wiping out everywhere. Needless to say, that didn't really faze us. That didn't stop us. And the chairlift actually went right over the terrain park where all of the jumps were. And I knew as soon as I saw it that I had to go off the biggest jump of the terrain park. There really wasn't even a moment of me going, well, should I be careful today? Or should I do that? There wasn't even that moment. I knew that's what I was doing. So I got to the top, buckled into my snowboard, took a breath of that crisp winter air, and confidently charged towards that jump with all my speed. And then going up to the jump, I caught the edge of my snowboard, and that's the last thing that I remember. So I learned that I went off that jump caught the edge of my snowboard as I was going up, and I was forced to go off the jump. And I landed on my head, and I wasn't wearing a helmet.
Mm.
One of the things that I learned, that although there were three things from that day that saved my life, and really is a testament to why I'm standing here today, able to tell this story with you and your listeners. The first being that although I didn't have a helmet, I had the pair of goggles that I was wearing they were pretty big. So although I wasn't wearing them on my eyes, they were sitting on the top of my head, and they had a lot of padding on them. So I believe everything happens for a reason, and not sure what your beliefs are, your listeners' beliefs, but that's what I think. And I learned that not only did they brace my impact, as I continued to roll down the mountain and continued to hit my head after I landed, my goggles mysteriously moved to cushion each blow as I rolled down the mountain. So between my head and the ice. The second thing was they wanted to bring a helicopter to the mountain to rush me to the hospital, and they couldn't because it was too windy. So they had to send in an ambulance. And out of the six paramedics, there was only one who could intubate on the spot, and I needed that to be able to breathe. He was one of the paramedics that showed up to the mountain that day. So there are still several things that I can't explain because of that day, because of the accident. But now I know one of those reasons is why I'm here today and able to share this story. The third thing, once I got to the hospital, I was out. I was out for the count. The doctors told my parents that based on the impact alone, I would have been out for 7 to 10 days at a minimum. And I already had swelling in my brain, so they had to put me into a coma so that my body could heal, so that swelling could come down. So after I was in the coma, and my parents were the only ones allowed in my room in the ICU. The doctors came into my room to share the updates, and as you can imagine, or from anyone that you know that's had a traumatic injury, they can't paint a rosy picture. So it's like the news was not so good, not so good, not so good. So they started to share all of that in front of me, the doctors, no fault of their own. However, my mom stopped them, and she said, no, no, not in front of him, because she understood that even though I was in a coma, I was still taking in information. So she made the doctors step outside the room. And once they were outside the room, that's where they shared what happened. That I was in a snowboarding accident. I was in a coma, and at that point, they weren't sure how long I was going to be out. I was in the coma, ended up being in the coma for 3 weeks. They also said that there's a good chance, even if he comes out of his coma, that he's probably not going to be able to walk, talk, or eat on his own ever again.
Wow.
So, because none of this was able to get through to my mind, whether subconsciously or unconsciously, I still mix those two up. Anyway, uh, because I didn't get through to my mind, I was able to treat it like any other situation, which was a month after my accident. So I was in the coma for 3 weeks. I really don't remember a month because it was a partially induced coma. So once I was transported to the rehab hospital in Boston, that's where my memories start and my journey started. So a month after my accident, what this allowed me to do, because none of that negative information got through to me, was just treat it like any other situation. As soon as I was able to, I got up, figuratively and literally, because I had to learn how to walk again, and just kept working and kept taking my next step and kept getting better every day. And it was at this point that I unknowingly started to use a system to not only make a full recovery, but run out of the hospital. And that's part of the work that I do today. What I teach to this day, the step system. And I'll give your listeners a 10,000 foot view of the step system, and then we can talk about it at the end too. It's support. So it's the step system. S is support. You have to make sure that you have the support of your family and friends right from the beginning. This is going to have you falling back on relationships that you built prior to your setback. T is trust. Trust that once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be available to you. Follow it. And this also starts with trusting that voice that you have inside of yourself, in the back of your head, if you will. So, the way I like to illustrate this, Stephen, is I overheard my parents a month when I was transported to the rehab hospital. I overheard my parents meeting with my doctors and therapists, and they would do that weekly. And that's part of what I teach to this day and work with people to this day, is that they were saying, all right, what do we have to do to make sure Nick makes a full recovery? I heard in the back of my head, no, and I couldn't even talk at this point. I was in a wheelchair and I couldn't even talk. However, I heard in the back of my head, no, you're going to run out. So then running out of the hospital became our common goal. And then back to the acronym, E is energy. So maintaining your energy allows your body's natural ability to be able to heal itself. And medication has the potential to get in the way of that. So, I mean, obviously within reason here, that first night in the hospital cost $250,000. It wasn't like I could say, no, I'm just going to take some echinacea and get a massage. I needed it to be able to survive. It was a traumatic event. However, there's a use time and place. So as soon as I was able to, when I was transported to that rehab hospital, I wanted to get off of the medication. P is persistence. So once you take your first step, keep getting up every day and taking your next step, no matter how small. By continuing to move forward every day, you are building an unstoppable momentum. So if you fast forward a little bit, less than 60 days later, I ran out of the hospital. I realized my goal of running out of the hospital. But that was really a start. If anything, that wasn't a finish line. I was starting at that point because I had to be tutored all summer long. In order, even when I got out in April, end of April, and I was able to go back to school, but I wasn't on the level with my classmates. So I get tutored in school.
So what grade were you in at this point while
I
this
was
all
in,
happened?
yeah, I was in eighth grade.
Okay, so this was like really early on.
Yeah, eighth grade. I was 14. Yep.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
That paints a picture.
Yeah. And I was actually, like I said, it wasn't the end running out of the hospital. My days would be, while there was still school, I would go in, get private tutoring at the school for 3 hours, then have lunch with my classmates. Then my mom would pick me up and I would go to outpatient therapy. I still had to do outpatient therapy for another 6 months. And along after school got out and we walked at eighth grade graduation, it wasn't like I was done. Everyone else was having summer, but I had to be tutored all summer long, 5 days a week for those 3 hours in order to continue on to high school with the rest of my classmates.
Totally.
And Steven, this is where real estate comes into play, because it's a little surreal to me that I like I said, I grew up in a family real estate business, so I was always around real estate. My dad, when I was real little, like toddler baby, was a builder. Then he was a realtor, then he was an investor, and he just kind of toggled between the two and did a bunch of different things all throughout my life. So um, it's a little surreal to me that because I'm sure you can relate to this. When you're younger, especially like when you're a kid, your time is compressed. So if you think 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, oh my God, that's so far away.
Yeah, everything feels
Reality,
that way.
the reality is 18 months isn't a lot of time. So I realize that now at 35 years old. It's not a lot of time. Um, and it's funny that 18 months later, 18 months after finishing rehab from my snowboarding accident and being in a coma and learn how to walk, talk, and eat again, I got my start in real estate. And that was door knocking pre foreclosure doors. So homeowners
Mm-hmm.
that, yep, notice of default doors basically. Pre foreclosure is a catchy term, and it's the catchiness of it has come back. Uh, People even always they're in pre foreclosure. Well, all pre foreclosure means is they've received the notice of default letter from the bank, and they miss one, two, three, or I mean, let's be serious. This was 2006. They made like 12. They could have missed 10 or 12 payments, and the bank still hadn't foreclosed on their house.
Right.
So I really didn't get in the beginning. I didn't get much training other than here's where you go find them. Here's where you go find the notice of default, the people that receive them. Uh, Here's the script that you say you when you go and knock on their door. And then if you don't get anyone home, here's a leave behind that you leave. So beyond that, I really didn't get any training at the beginning.
I
So
mean, but that's plenty of training. That's how you learn right there.
that's it. I had enough. And I've always been like taking, I want to get the limited amount of information, take action, and then adjust, and then I can get better. But
Yep.
if I don't take action, nothing's going to happen. So I,
100%. How did you
in my,
find yourself out there?
I'm
Like,
sorry.
did you ask your dad or your family, or is it just kind of expected that you were gonna get into some kind of real estate as well?
I wanted to. So after my accident, the summer after my accident, I started reading a book. Wasn't like expected, but it's what I wanted to do. It's what I saw my dad doing. It's what I wanted to do. So I saw a book in his library, Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kawasaki, and that's what really got me interested and really got my wheels turning. And I came to him and I said around that time, 2005, and I said, "Hey, I want to help. Like I want to get involved and I want to do something." And right around that time, I was getting my real estate license. I mean, I'm sorry, not my real estate license, my driver's license. I was only 16.
Okay.
I wasn't able to get my real estate license. I was only 16 years old. So um, I was just getting my driver's license, and they were right around that time playing with the idea of having a bird dog go out and knock on the doors of these notice of default doors and set up meetings for one of our investors to meet with them the following week about
Hmm.
potentially buying their home. So that's what I would do. And like I said, it didn't I had to go to school during the week, unfortunately. I mean I had to go to high school during the week. So I only had weekends and holidays to do this. So in my mind, I thought, well, I'm not going to go to like the nice suburbs and where there's only a couple in this town and then you have to drive another 45 minutes and there's a couple in this other town. I wanted to go to the areas where I could hit the most amount of doors, get the most amount of opportunities so I could get better, and just because I had limited time.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
what that equated to was cities, um, and I didn't really think of it at the time, but not so great areas of cities where they were literally right next door to each other. It was very efficient for me. I mean, I was doing up to 70 doors in a day at one point at
This is
my peak.
and this is what Boston as well.
This is it's within Massachusetts.
Okay, Massachusetts.
I don't want to alienate anyone
No
by
worries, no worries.
yeah.
I'm just trying to get an idea for where it is in the listener. So this is in Massachusetts. Got you.
Yeah. So I mean, the thing was I started and I wasn't seeing a lot of success in the beginning, and I got a lot of doors slammed in my face. I had no nuance, no tact, and I'd rush up to the door and I'd be like, "Hey, my name's Nick. I'm with pre property holding whatever." and I'm here to help you out of your unfortunate situation. I get a lot of doors slammed in my face. However, that's not a bad thing. Rejection is not a bad thing. So shortly after that, my cousin Mike and my dad sent us out to California to shadow the number one person in the country that was having success with these notice of default doors. And once I saw his approach and how much it differed, Stephen, from mine, like how nuanced it was. Everything, every little detail was rehearsed. And it wasn't not like to manipulate people, but just to get them on your side quicker and help them uh, bring their walls down, if you
Yeah,
will.
build a connection, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Hmm.
once I implemented what I learned with him out in California, I started seeing a lot of success, and I was scheduling meetings every week for one of our investors to come down and meet with them. And we ended up owning homes in that city for years afterwards, years after doing this kind of experiment. And after I graduated high school, after high school, I got my real estate license, and then that's kind of where my story kind of changes, because I got my real estate license in March of 2008. So I know everyone's probably thinking, wow, what a great time to be a realtor. March
Yeah.
of 2008.
I do want to dive a little more there because a lot of people, in my audience, they may never have knocked on doors like this. Maybe they have heard about it, but they're like, I don't really know what goes on here. So what was sort of the idea, like you were saying, is to knock on doors. Those who've gotten notice of defaults, they're in uh, pre-foreclosure, air quotes, pre-foreclosure in
Yeah.
this case. The notice has been received, or multiple of them, in fact. And at which point, that's when, if they're not paying, the bank would take it back. So your job would be to what? Like, what was your goal? Just for the listeners, the goal was to talk with the homeowner so that you and your investor team could go and help to pay it off, to do a subject to, or something like that. And we don't have to get into those
This
strategies,
was
but just kind of get into the goal.
Yeah, so this was actually before we developed the kind of before my dad re-engineered the business and like came up with this whole well, not come up came up with it because he didn't invent it, but like buying on subject to owner financing or lease purchase. This was prior to the crash in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
So everything, his company and everything that he was building was signing personally on loans. So it was prior to the crash, and at that point, I don't know. I wasn't involved in the intimate details. Like I said, I was only 16. My job, all I knew, was to set meetings for our one of our investors to meet with them the following week about buying their home, and that's as far as I knew.
Got
I
it.
just knew that it was pre 2008, so he was signing personally on most of these loans, and I think it was anywhere from 20 to 30 at the time of the crash in 2008. So that's the whole reason why we kind of re-engineered the business and why we're doing it, uh, buying and selling creatively without using bank financing or without using big investor down payments or big down payments of our own
Got it. Got it. Got it.
right now. So that it's kind of changed.
Got it. So at this point, you're when you're getting your real estate license, are you this is what, near graduation, or have you graduated already?
After, yeah, I graduated in 2007. I got my real estate license in March of 2008. It just sticks out to me, March 8th, 2008, just because a lot of things were going on during that time. It was really interesting that I would, in my first pre-licensing class, I think there were like 45 people in there, and then at the last pre-licensing course there was only like a handful of people.
Totally.
It
Yeah.
was it was yeah, it was crazy. And then taking my test, it was the same thing. It was a bunch of people in the room, and then it took me a few times, a few iterations of trying to pass the test to do that. On the third time, I was the only one there.
Nice. Crazy. Why did you even want to do this? You've been, obviously you came from real estate family, it was all around you. You were knocking on doors already, at 16, so still in high school. Walk me through, like, before we get into the rest of the story there, the thinking around why to go get the real estate license if there was so much knowledge, in the business and family already.
I don't know. It's just something. It was something that once upon a time, my dad at this time didn't have his real estate license. However, I saw him growing up. He was a realtor helping buyers and sellers. So I don't know. It was a path that I just saw as an easy entry for me
Mm-hmm.
at the time, and it just made sense. Um, Especially with
Cool.
everything going on in the market, just because the market was a little topsy turvy at that time.
Got it. That makes sense. So it seems like it could have been, a value add to the family as well. Going like, me as the son, Nick as the son, going and getting the license to going through and soaking up as much knowledge on that path as well.
Yeah, that was. I'm sure that was part of it. Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure that was part of it. And then as a realtor, I was like full bore, full time from like 2008 to 2012. Like the pretty much the or all the way up to really a little bit later, but in that time frame, 2008 to 2012, and I was that was in like one of the toughest times, like market wise, that we've seen, and I was able to make a living, support myself, and I was rock and rolling. I was having fun doing that. However, in 2012, I developed a voice issue.
Mm,
um, so I started looking everywhere, and no one could give me a straight answer. No one could tell me what really was happening. They're like, oh, no, you're fine. Like my primary care physician checked me out. He said, no, all your levels are fine. You're good. And no one could really pinpoint it. So I got referred to an ear, nose, and throat doctor. And then he was the one that really said, "Oh, well, it could be this," and I was even resistant to take that feedback at the time, just because I was, going through processing it, going through your own thing.
sure.
However, after developing it, like a year later, I wound up in a voice specialist office in Boston, and after looking everywhere for a year and dealing with this, it was so nice. The guy walked in the room, heard me speak, and right away nonchalantly goes, "Oh, that? Yeah, we deal with that all the time. Get scheduled for a Botox injection in a couple weeks." And I
Wow.
was just like, I was sold, hook, line, and sinker. So I got scheduled, and for 7 years, I received Botox injections into my vocal folds, along with their higher level speech pathologist, to retrain myself to speak again. It was almost like it was hard to get the words out. Um, so that was something. I may have recency bias, but that's something that I frankly I'm more proud of than my accident, because my accident was, I don't know, just something I dealt with when I was growing up. But this took like 8 years to really get it out of my system. Obviously, I don't have an issue with my voice anymore. My last injection was in February of 2020, and then with our company, so I started doing more and more. My dad approached me, and he started buying and selling properties again after the crash, creatively, like without using any bank financing or big down payments or um, investor down payments or anything like that. He started doing that in 2013. So in 2014, he asked me, end of 2014, he asked me, "Hey, can you help me market all these properties that I'm getting under contract for buyers?" And I was resistant at first. So, and I know what your question is, because I didn't cover it. So some of the ways that, just to give your listeners like a 10,000 foot view, some of
Yeah.
the
What is
ways.
what does creative mean exactly?
Yeah, I was just gonna. Yeah, the as just to keep it really it can go so much more in depth, but just to keep it like 10,000 foot view. Some of the ways that we buy creatively is on a lease purchase agreement. Um, and another one is subject to someone's existing financing and will actually close on the property. And then another way, if they don't have a mortgage, is owner financing. And then we can structure something like principal only payments. And that's just some of the ways that we buy, but just to keep it really basic for everyone. And then, however we're buying, we're always selling on a rent to own agreement to to a buyer, to a tenant buyer. There's only 18% of the market who can get a loan today and walk into a bank and get a loan. And the other 82%, I'm not saying they're all good, Stephen. However, there's a large portion in there that they have money for the down payment, they have savings, they have great incomes, they can't get financing today. So we get them into the house with a down payment of anywhere from 3 to 10% of the price, sometimes more, structured over time, and then get them connected with a credit enhancement company that's going to get back to us all and let us know how long it's going to be until they're mortgage ready. And then we're just going to make sure that we're giving them plenty of time with the lease to become mortgage ready.
Awesome. So that, I think you said it was 17% or 18% of the market, 80% of people across the US are only able to get financing. The rest are unable to do so. And it's usually because they do not have the credit. They don't have the credit worthiness for whatever the reason is. Maybe it's just not, the credit isn't good enough. Like their lower credit score is a way to simplify that, right?
Yeah, a lot of self-employed people, like
Mm.
people starting their own business that need seasoning, that need 2 years of tax returns and everything to show that to the bank. So a lot of people like that. Those have been a lot of our buyers, and so with that, we started building up our company, and this is just my dad, like family company. My dad, an assistant, and myself. And as we grew and grew, we got to 72 properties at our peak. At one point, we just kept buying and kept doing this process, and then getting a rent to own buyer, and we just rinse and repeat, kept doing it. And then we started playing with the idea. People started asking, well, how'd you guys do this? So then that's really where Smart Real Estate Coach was born. And now we still have a family real estate business. However, primarily we do deals with associates all over the country who we, in essence, partner with and kind of revenue share on the deals. And really, we're able to teach them and to help them implement the same systems, tools, and processes that we built in our business over the years. So, like I said, they're all over the country, and then with that, I've got several opportunities to speak, to be able to tell my story from stage. We first started having events, and we first started this whole like the whole coaching end of this in 2016, in a basement, nonetheless. That was our first event. But now we hold several events per year, and we just held our last one for the first time in Boston. And I've always had the opportunity to speak and share my story. It was at that point, it was really it was 10, 15, 20 minutes max. Then someone who saw me speak, saw me tell my story. I was still going through the final throes of my voice issue. My voice was still, it was tight. It was like really hard to get the like.
Mm.
It was good enough to speak. It was just really tight, and that was 5 years ago in 2019. And after sharing my story, someone approached me and said, and and let me backtrack here. I've always had this voice in the back of my head, going back to the voice in the back of your head. I've always had this voice in my head since I got out of school, and that's saying that, all right, great. Like, glad you're being successful as a real estate agent. Glad you're being successful as a investor and a coach, and that's awesome. But what you really need to be doing is telling your story from stage and helping trauma survivors get through their trauma and thrive with the rest of their lives. So that voice has always been there, whatever I'm doing. And after I spoke in 2019, I shared my story. When this woman approached me, she gave me her card and said, "I'm not trying to steal you from your family real estate business. However, if you're ever looking to fine tune your message and bring it to another level, so that it has maximum impact and you're able to help the most amount of people possible, I can introduce you to a few mentors and coaches that have helped me." Well, I still had yet to. My voice was still tight, and I still had to get a couple more treatments, a couple more Botox treatments until I was ready. However, I always held on to that card. And in May of 2021, I finally reached out to her and said, "All right, I'm ready. What should I do?" And
So this
a
is like
lot,
years later.
a year and a half later.
Yeah.
Yeah, a year and a half later. It's a little more than a year and a half later.
Yeah.
Anyway, the so much had changed. I mean, COVID, like so much had changed. However, she was able to refer me to her mentor, Trisha Brooke, who's become my mentor. And I can be candid with you here. I had a call with her. And since my first call with Trisha, there has been no voice in the back of my head and telling me that I should be helping trauma survivors, tell my story from stage and help trauma survivors thrive with the rest of their lives. And Stephen, what that's evidence to me of is that I'm doing exactly what I was put on this earth to do. So bless you.
Thank you.
And I shared what I was looking to do, what my goals were with her. And I said, "Do you think that's possible?" She said, "Yeah, absolutely." And I said, what do you recommend?" She said, "Well, you should do the speaker salon." That was in the fall of 2021. I said, "Well, what's a speaker salon?" No, I was clueless, no idea. She said, "You commute to New York City for 6 weeks in a row. And the 6th week is when you get to perform your talk. You work with me and 10 to 15 other speakers to help really fine tune and come up with a talk." Some people didn't even have a talk going into it. So I had a little bit of a base from what I've done telling my story over the years. However, she said, "You're going to work on that with me on stage at the Triad Theater in New York City for 5 weeks. And then the 6th week is when you're going to perform for influencers, TEDx organizers, and other event organizers that book speakers to speak, like the book talk." So
Yep.
you get to perform it on the 6th week for those people. So I said yes, and she said, "That's 25,000." I said, "Okay, 100%." And then working with her during the speaker salon, she pitched the idea of what it would look like to work one on one with her. She works with speakers um, she specializes in working with speakers to help them build out their speaker platform and help them get started. And Stephen, I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know what a speaker platform was. And that's what you see over my shoulder, Common Goal. That's my company. So I said yes. She said, "That's 75,000." I said, "I don't have that money under my mattress. Give me a week." And I went and applied for financing, and I'm within days or weeks of being able to pay off that loan, which is pretty cool to me. She was the one that really helped me start Common Goal in January of 2022, and with her help, back and forth writing it, she was able to help me write my keynote. Now I deliver my keynote 50 to 60 minutes for brain injury associations all over the country. I have one coming up in a few weeks, which is the Brain Injury Association of America, virtually. So it's like without her and without all that work I did with her, none of that would be possible. I may have got there in 10, 15, 20 years, but it kind of shortened my learning curve, if you will.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Good job for making just being committed to it. And it's interesting, that quote unquote voice goes away when you're kind of on purpose,
Mm.
right? Of doing what you're supposed to be doing, because it's no longer like you should be doing something else. It's like, no, this is the path. So especially to these different associations. I mean, people need to hear these stories. But tell me about. So I see the board behind you. I see some photos. I think I see some docs on the right side as well. Talk, like, just for the listeners who may not be watching, describe what you're referring to when you're talking speaker platform.
So she was the one that helped me come up with. All right, so let me backtrack. You know how I talked about the step system?
Yep.
So before my work with her one on one, and meeting her, all that was up here. All that was in my head.
Mm.
So I was actually, when I got, after running out of the hospital, like I said, it was something that happened when I was younger. I was like, oh, anyone would do that. And people say to me now, no, like that's not normal. That was normal to me. It was such a short window. I mean, start to finish was less than 3 months running out of the hospital, and then it was only another 6 months for outpatient rehab. But it was just something I dealt with, and I dealt with it when I was growing up. However, after coming out on the other side of this voice issue and overcoming this voice issue and getting my voice back again, just like I had it after my accident, I started to my brain started to fire, and I was like, I have something here. Because not only did I recover from my snowboarding accident, I did it again with my voice disorder. So I'm like, I have something here, like to be able to share with the world. And that was where really Common Goal came from. So
Got it.
speaker platform is really, it's the step system, the entire step system. I only shared like a fraction, like a 10,000 foot view, a summary of it. But it's the entire step system, um, which is support, trust, energy, and persistence. And what I can do at the end, I'm not sure if this is an appropriate time to share it. If your listeners go to my website, nickprefontaine.com/step, they can download the entire step system for free today. And that's going to teach them all about support, trust, energy, and persistence. So Trisha said to me when we started working together one on one, she said, all right, so you got in your snowboarding accident, you were in a coma for 3 weeks, and then you had to learn how to walk, talk, and eat again. You ran out of the hospital. How'd you do it? I was like, I don't know. I just got up and just kept working every day, until I got there. And she goes, no, not good enough. She kept
Exactly.
asking me to a point where I think it was like 6 or 7 layers deep, where I was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't know. However, I'm really happy that she did, because that she helped me birth the step system. She was able to pull it out of me, and that's everything that I do. From the step video program, which is a video program that I have, which is like almost like one-on-one coaching. It gets me in the people's corner that are going through something, um, a life challenge, crisis, or trauma. Step the ebook. So none of that existed. And my keynote, which is like 50 to 60 minutes long, depending on the what I have for that particular association, all that. And in my keynote, I get to actually teach the step system. All that didn't exist. that's what I'm referring to in building out my speaker platform, which I didn't even know what it meant when I said yes to it.
Got it.
I knew I wanted more of her.
That makes perfect sense. And I love that last thing you just said. You wanted more of her in the perspective of more what she has to offer, more what she can help with, more of the building on that trust, the strategies and tactics along the way, and getting some of those quote unquote results to it's almost that self discovery process of how you take your own quote unquote mess and make it your message as well, right? Um, so I'm being considerate of your time here. I want to ask here, as we're thinking about the takeaways. I realize this is only a 10,000-foot view, but I want to, poke at this a little bit. Is what when we think about step system, I think it was the support, trust, energy, and persistence.
Oh,
Things like
I wanted to test your recall. That was really good. I saw you like searching for it. That was good.
I remembered.
You remembered it all.
Yeah. Um, uh, and um, what I wanted to ask though is like, what is the takeaway for something like the talk here? Like, what is the takeaway for the listener in a really tangible sense? I mean, for them to go and dive more into this. The reason why I ask it that way is because you said things like the support of your friends and family before before something happens, but if you're talking to people who had something happen and they don't have these things in place, like what do you tell that person?
I definitely wasn't referring to. I wasn't referring to before your setback. I was just
Okay.
talking about like when that happens, when you have your setback, and a lot of people. One of the things, Stephen, that I talk about within STEP is a lot of people. The first thing is to make sure you have an advocate. And I was only 14 when I got into my accident, so my advocate was my parents.
Hmm.
However, it doesn't have to be your parents. It can be a friend that you're really close with. It can be a neighbor that you're really close with. And a lot of people get locked into this. Well, I don't have family. Easy for you. I don't have family, so therefore none of this can work for me. Well, the way that I like to help people with that is that it doesn't your support and your advocate doesn't necessarily have to be your family, especially when you've had any kind of a life challenge, crisis, or trauma. You, I'm sure, have noticed that there's people that are coming around that are always asking how can they help you, whether it's a neighbor or a friend or just someone you're not thinking of and you're not open to because you're locked into it has to be family. It doesn't have to be family. It can be your support, and your advocate can come from anywhere.
Got it. And then so go go and keep an open mind. List the people that the people that have talked to you, that have come around, that have asked you how you're doing, and go make that connection with them.
Yeah, and it's not even something that you're going to have to. Anyone that's gone through a trauma knows this. It's not something that you're going to have to go and seek out and make all these phone calls after, excuse me, after a traumatic injury to say, all right, well, okay, who should I list out here? Like they'll make themselves known. They'll be coming around asking and always being there to support you. You just have to be open to receiving that, other than just have a parent or a close sibling or something. You have to be open to it.
Yeah, good call. Good call. We'll be open to it. And then the T, the trust, break that down a little more. Remind the listeners what you're referring to here on trust, and what is like one action step that they can go do to like take this T, trust, into action.
Sure, I can touch on the what I'll do is just touch on the first element of trust,
Hmm.
which is having blind faith. You have to take everyone at their word, and when I say that, like I refer to this. that when I was learning how to walk, talk, and eat again, I wasn't able to question the doctors and therapists when they asked me to do something. Is this really going to work, or don't you think we should do it another way? Like I had to have blind faith that they knew what they were. They've been there before, so they knew what I needed to do in order to get everything back. Um, and the reason it's blind faith is because you don't know at the beginning, but it's your only option to trust that. Secondly, trust means being in integrity. You have to do what you say and say what you'll do. No exceptions. Uh, this isn't about sunshine and rainbows. This is going to be work, and um, you'll see once you get through to the other side that it'll be worth it for you.
Yeah. So trusting in the vision and trusting in the process and having integrity in yourself from the perspective that you need to um, develop that trust and do what you say you're going to do. So it's kind of the outward and inward. And then uh, on from an energy perspective, you talked a little bit about this, but I want to make this maybe go ahead and talk about this again. How would you? Well, give me an idea. Like, what was the action here for energy? Right? You talked about not wanting to be on medication, but you had to be for a certain amount of time. You want there to be the natural energy to heal. Like, what does this look like in in reality or not reality? What is another example of this from energy?
Sure, I didn't. I'm glad you brought it up. I'm glad you went back to it because I didn't get a chance to really go in depth here.
Mm-hmm.
So, energy is something that is one of my favorites to talk about, and that's because it is something that I still focus on to this day. So, energy is, yeah. I gave you that first thing, which is to as soon as possible to make sure that you got off the medication so that you could allow your body to heal. However, after getting off the medication, like for example, 3 years after running out of the hospital, I started to, and I still work on this to this day, I started to see a naturopathic doctor to rid my body of all the toxins.
Mm.
And what he talked about, he was in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. What he talked about was, and what his whole methodology was behind your blood type. So your diet would be based on your blood type. You would have different supplements based on your blood type. And then I would go there every 2 to 3 weeks for 3 years to get all kinds of treatments, foot bath, colonic, hyperbaric chamber, infrared sauna, fangotherapy, like all of those. I would get that every 2 to 3 weeks. And then after 3 years of doing that, I had a review. I would have a review every six to 12 months with a doctor from the institute, and they said to me that, well, you've done such a great job with sticking with the diet and taking all the supplements, and most importantly, doing all these treatments every 2 to 3 weeks. I think you've rid your body of all the toxins, and at this point, we really can't do anything for you. You can continue to come back here for maintenance. However, it was right at that time, so March of 2009, that I get introduced to Dr. Ming Wu. And I still see him. I just saw him last week for Tui Na. Um, and you can look that up. It's TUI space NA, Tui Na followed by cupping.
Mm-hmm.
And I see him once every 5 weeks to help keep my energy in tune so I'm able to impact and affect the most amount of people possible. And if I didn't have that, Stephen, I think I'd be lost. So that's one of the things that I share with trauma victims is that they should start doing this process of self-care and taking care of yourself, because if you don't have your energy, how can you expect to take care of and affect other people?
Yeah, 100%. It's the quote comes to mind is the sick person or the man who's healthy has 1,000 wishes. The person who's sick only has one.
Yeah.
right? To be healthy. So, and then anything you want to mention on persistence? That seems, I mean, that is a topic that we could have a whole, conversation about. But I want to be sensitive again, just sensitive to time here for you. Is there anything you want to mention on persistence as the last step?
Yes, like there's a few things. So I'll give another a little thing about persistence, and then I also the real estate portion that we touched on. I want to kind of give your listeners next steps if they're interested at all. They don't have to be. I'm just saying if they're interested in how we buy and sell creatively, I can give your listeners a little first
Go
step
for it.
there. So persistence. The thing is with persistence, once you take your first step, your next step is always going to be available to you, especially at the beginning. So I talk about this, and there are so many applications to the step system right now. Just at this very infantile stage, I'm focused on helping trauma survivors, life challenge, crisis, or trauma. However, this has a wide ranging application. So with myself, with starting this company, Common Goal. So I use the same thing. It's a step system. That's how I did it. And the at the beginning of a setback, or a life challenge or a crisis, you want to be taking action every day. I'm not talking 7, 8, 10 hour days. I'm small, because if you're doing something every day, like even on the weekends, even on your day off, is to, oh well, I'm going to look into or come up with a list, or just something. I'm going to do one exercise. It's going to take me 5 or 10 minutes. By doing something every day, you are building an unstoppable momentum. And that's how I was able to launch Common Goal. It was every single day. Although it wasn't a 7, 8, 10 hour day, I was doing something. And that helped me carry me through the tough times, because let's be candid. Life has its challenges, and everyone's gonna gonna the quote that comes to mind is everyone has a plan until they get smacked in the face.
Oh yeah.
But everyone's going to get hit. So you have to build that momentum of taking action every day. It's going to carry you through the tough times. Then on the real estate end, if anything that I mentioned piques your interest, you can head over to smartrealestatecoach.com. And if you scroll down, you can get registered for a free masterclass. Um, they've been playing with the time. I think it's 30 minutes. It might be 50 or 60, but I think it's 30 minutes. It's going to teach you all about how we buy and sell on turns. And by the end, if it's a good fit for you, which it's not a fit for everyone, and we get that, you'll be able to take your next step.
Appreciate you mentioning that. I've covered a lot today. Last question is, one of the things I always want to make sure that's really clear to anyone is the amount of time investment. Audience here is usually pretty strapped for time. We talked about this briefly, and that's we can call that a different prioritization, in their life, or some people might think of that as an excuse. If I don't have time, I don't have money, all that kind of stuff. But the reality is that not every vehicle in real estate is a good fit for people too, right? So, there's 1,000 ways to get rich with real estate. It just depends on what your time, money, resources allocation is. So, talk to me about who would be a good fit for that next step for this webinar, for that free masterclass. Is it people that might have a little more time and they want to get into real estate and learn those strategies?
Great question. We've worked with a lot of people that are transitioning from corporate and leaving their corporate job, like
Yeah.
that's been in something for 15, 20, or 25, or even 30 years. And we've helped them transition. So everyone has a limited time frame. There's no one that joins us that says, yeah, I have 8 hours a day. I'm not doing anything. Let me know what to do. Um, so everyone has limited time. I mean, we've had coaches that we have now that have snuck out to their car and made calls on their phone, or listened to the mastermind call, snuck out of work and been in their car and like taking a break. So we've worked, and we're continuing to work with people that have demanding W-2s and helping them transition. So everyone's plan is specifically designed to them. It's not a one size fits all. So there are some people that it's going to take 2, 3, or even more years to have them transition. Others want to do it quicker, want to do it more quickly, so they can do it inside of 12 or 18 months. So it's depending on their complete situation and what they're looking to accomplish.
Outstanding. Thanks for elaborating on that. It is always the persistence, always just being aware of what the commitment is so that you can go and execute to the best of your ability and the resources you have, and to go get more resources, being resourceful, 100%. You mentioned a couple different places to go and connect with you already. If you want, you can go ahead and mention that again, and what's the best places to even connect with you, Nick?
Sure. All right. So how they can find me and get the free ebook step is nickprefontaine.com/step. And I am on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. However, the best way to find me is to go there, my website, nickprefontaine.com/step, and connect with me there.
Outstanding. I'll make sure that gets in the show notes for you, brother. Appreciate you.
Hey, thank you, Steven, for giving me the opportunity to share with your audience. This has been a lot of fun.
100%. Cool. Have a great one. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Path to Passive. We love connecting with our listeners and those on the path to architecting their wealth and improving their lives. Feel free to let us know what topics you'd like to see in future episodes. Get in touch with us through email or Instagram. See you next week for a new episode.